Hello, my name is Dr. Irina Gokh, and today I'm going to talk about NotebookLM. For students, it could be a really exciting study buddy, and for my colleagues, it helps us to shape and refine the storyline of our lectures and help us to find patterns in the information that we already have. Let's get started. What you can see now is how NotebookLM looks like, and there are two folders that I have in my NotebookLM. The folders are slightly different because they contain slightly different information. I will show you in a moment what is the difference. Let's start with the folder BAIB 3002, which is the code for the module that I'm teaching on. The module is called Emerging Market, Economic Geography and Trends. Let's click on the folder here. On your left-hand side, you can see sources of information, and it's very easy to add sources. At this particular moment, I do have some sources here, but if you click on this toggle here, add sources, you can just drag and drop sources here. There are a variety of types of files that are accepted. PowerPoints are not accepted, at least at the moment, and if you need to upload your PowerPoints, you can convert them to PDFs. That's what I did. So you can upload sources here. You can also use Google Files. You could upload links to websites. And you can also upload links to YouTube videos, or you can copy and paste the text yourself. That's how you add sources here. On your left-hand side here, what you can see are my sources. In this particular notebook, I have only sources that I've made as part of my module. So you have lecture notes. I also have notes from guest speakers. We have guest speakers who talks about a variety of different emerging markets, or it's either their home country or they did some work there, such as research, some projects. I uploaded that materials there. I also have information on assessments. I do have 2 assessments on the module, and I have uploaded materials that are relevant to that assessment that students have access to, such as assessment brief, the job description, assessment rubric that tells students how they're going to be marked and also suggests the ways or what they need to include in the assessment. So there are 2 assessments. One of them is the job application using Microsoft Sway as a tool. And the second assessment is the reflective blog. The way how I can use the NotebookLM, if I would be a student, I could create a personalized study tool for myself. If you click on the toggle here, you can configure your notebook towards your specific goal. So for example, you can ask it to be a more forward-looking business analyst, or you can ask it to be your guide. There is also a way to customize, so you can provide a specific custom instructions, and you can do it, and it's going to be very effective. For this particular overview, I would like to use NotebookLM as a study guide. And I would like to choose the longer responses. I can click on the Save button here. I did prepare a question in advance. The question is about the assessment. I am a student now, and I've uploaded my materials onto the NotebookLM, and I want to see what it can do to help me to answer the question that you see on your screens. NotebookLM comes up with a really elaborate answer, and I could see, because I'm looking at this in the same way as you will be watching my video. I have not seen this particular response before, and every time you sort of ask a question, it does provide a slightly different way. It responds in a slightly different way, but in general it does help me to understand where I should start and how I could incorporate different elements of the module. It does state things that you need to do. For example, it does suggest that you need to showcase DMU graduate attributes. It suggests that it emphasizes as a required element in your reflective blog and how you could do it. And also what it does, it suggests different sources. Again, it uses only the sources that I've uploaded, and those numbers here, 3, 10, 11, 12, for example, here, those are sources from the module. So it directly links the answer to the sources. However, I do think that we need to be careful because careful in a way how we perceive the responses, because some responses could be more one-sided, and in reality the answer could be slightly different. So for example, in this module, students do not have to choose a specific country when they talk about their skills and competences in the assessment. They may, but they do not have to. But some of the responses that I got earlier when I was preparing to record this video suggested that you could choose a country or should choose a country. In this case, we always need to be mindful and critical of what we see on the screens. What I would like to do now is to ask the same question, but I want to change the setting from guide to analyst, and I would like a shorter answer. And I click save, and I paste the same question here. The difference in my view that in general they say the same thing, but the analyst answer is just more forward looking, so kind of suggesting specific steps. I think that they both can act as a guide, but they have just slightly different way of communicating the same thing, and it depends on what you would like to work on or how you feel you study better. But what it does, it helps us to create the truly personalized learning, because students can use this tool outside of the classroom and they can ask different questions that are very specific to them. Because we as educators, we can anticipate questions from students, but they may have their own questions and that we may not think about. And we sometimes think that something is quite obvious, but it's not. And this tool can really help different students to learn in a different way. What you also can do in this particular tool, you could create different study guides. You can create briefing documents, timelines, or frequently asked questions. For example, briefing document, I clicked on the briefing document here and it's been generated. We'll see what it will generate. It could generate a timeline. If you're dealing with any historical accounts, it will be very helpful, I believe. I've also clicked here on loading the conversation that I will show you in a second, but because it takes time to do so, I've just done it now. We can come back to it later. We generated a couple of documents. This is the briefing note summary, and it provided summary of, I think, everything that we had so far. So far we had 3 lectures and generated a summary, a brief summary. In terms of the timeline of events, we do have some of the discussions that are related to history. Some of the guest speakers talked about different historical events, and it provided the summary here, which is very interesting and very helpful. Another tool within this tool that we have is already quite famous, which is a podcast. With NotebookLM, you could generate different podcasts. In this case, the podcast is here. I did not provide any specific instructions on how you can generate a specific podcast. It's just a generic podcast, but using my own tools, using my own documents. You could also provide instructions that are specific. For example, you could instruct NotebookLM to create a podcast that helps you to build a story. It's not just the NotebookLM will choose how to go about the podcast, but they will focus on the things that you want it to focus on. In this case, I will need to delete my own podcast now. I will show you in a second how to do it, but before I go into customization and how to do it, I would like to show you some of the features of the podcasts. Here, let's click play.
Welcome to our deep dive all about emerging markets. Clearly you're interested in these economies, and
that's how it sounds. It's a very pleasant experience. It's very pleasant to just listen to the podcast. I do like to listen it and then go back to my own lecture and think whether this is how I told my story or not. And it helps me to also refine my own ideas, because when I hear those ideas being kind of said back to me, I may have additional questions, or I may think about refining those ideas. And what I would like to demonstrate now is a very new feature. This feature allows you to interact with that podcast. Let's have a look.
Welcome to our deep dive all about emerging markets. Clearly, you're interested in these economies.
So that
and
is a
you've got a stack
podcast.
of sources that I think goes way beyond just looking at the usual headlines. We're talking lecture notes, study guides, a comparison matrix, even a job description that calls on understanding emerging markets. So are you ready to unpack this and figure out what makes these markets tick?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the most fascinating things
And
here
what I
is
would
that we're
like
not
to
just
do
looking at
now, I
financial
would like
data.
to
We have
click
really a
on
multifaceted
this
view
join
here,
button.
which allows us to...
Hey there. Want to share your thoughts on this?
Hi, I have a question. Let's say I am a student and I would like to know what is the best way to structure my job application. Because in the module documents, there is no information that tells me what should go first and then second and etc. I guess it's similar to the real life when you do not have, no one tells you how to structure your job application, but maybe you can help me to guide me and suggest the steps.
That's a fantastic question, and it's definitely something that many students grapple with.
Yeah, it's like they give you all the pieces, but not the instructions on how they should all fit together.
Exactly. While the module documents don't explicitly lay out a rigid structure for your job application, they do provide a roadmap.
Okay, let's unpack this a little bit. It seems that the key is to think of it as a narrative.
What's fascinating here is you have to tell a compelling story about your skills and your experiences.
Right, and this story needs to align with what they are looking for in a junior business development manager.
So first, you should clearly establish the role you're applying for, right at the beginning.
Yeah, you can't just assume that they know that you are applying.
This is absolutely fascinating and this is so exciting. What I've done right now, I asked the question that actually students asked me. And I thought, well, this is in a real life, the job application there's no steps. No one tells you how to apply for a job. And many of my students, because it's a third year module and students are going to be graduating soon, they are obviously looking for jobs. And the assignment itself is very relevant, not just to the module, but to the development of skills. And one of the questions they asked me is how to structure it. And I think that there is no particular way how you can structure it because it's your job application and you know how to showcase your competences and skills in the best way. It's your story. And I think when you interact with the podcast, it helps you to think in a different way. It helps you to voice your questions, to speak them out, and then to hear the answer back. It allows you to study in so many ways. It's sort of a multimodal study tool, which is absolutely awesome. What I wanted to show you as well, so we've explored the podcast. If you do want to, if you want to create your own customized podcast, you'll need to start with a clean slate. I've just deleted my existing podcast. And by the way, when it's deleted, it's deleted. So if you want to generate a new podcast, and if you have something existing, you need to download the previous one. And here you can click on this button, customize. So you can customize it and you can type in particular instructions. So for instance, you can ask ChatGPT to come up with a specific prompt that fits to the specific word limit here, and you will copy and paste those instructions. So what I like to do, I like to instruct the NotebookLM to create a story out of my lecture, and then when I will be hearing it back, I will try to understand and learn how I can learn the storytelling and connect with my audience in a better way so I can learn and also grow and transform professionally. Now, then another thing that I would like to do is I would like to go to this part, to this notebook, human-centered skills in the digital age. And what I would like to show you is a slightly different notebook because it has much more sources. So one of the interesting way of using this tool that is perhaps not very evident or not very intuitive is here I have 48 different sources. It's a combination of my own materials, guest lecture notes, websites, and PDFs. And let's say I want to search for some of the information within my own sources. So let's say you have thousands of sources here. Of course, there is a limit what you can upload, but let's say if the limit is 50, or I don't remember particularly, 50 or 300 sources per notebook, then one PDF could contain thousands of pages, right? Imagine that you have a lot of different sources within NotebookLM and you wanted to find your information really quick. So for instance, I have this question and I'm acting as a student with variety of sources in the NotebookLM. Let's say I remember my lecturer said something about the clustering of economic activity, and I also explored it during the seminar using maps. Help me to find information about clustering so I can prepare better for the upcoming seminar. I do want slightly longer answer. The answer is very elaborate. It does explain the concept of clustering, also known as agglomeration, economic geography, and it does provide sources of information, right? So all is very interesting. Yes, we did talk about manufacturing belt in the US and Silicon Valley. It was part of the discussion in the lecture. We also, during the seminar, we explored different infrastructure related to the clustering using Bloomberg maps. It's a really good way of searching for information within your own sources. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this video. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comments down below.